Welcome to Dad Space. Dave here. Nice to have you with us, Dad Space. Today we have Kristin Birdwell. Kristin is an author. And you're like, wait a minute, is this Dad Space? Yeah, this is Dad Space. Kristin is coming on and she has a message to her dad and to dads from a daughter's point of view. Aren't you interested? Aren't you curious? Kristin is an author. Do you want to know more? Then you need to stick around. Don't skip this podcast. This is Kristin Birdwell. Do you know who this is? Kristin Birdwell's here on Dad Space. Here we go. Enjoy. So Kristin is an author. She wrote a book. Her book is called Sex, Drugs, and Soul. We've dropped the rock and roll and we've added the soul. Kristin is an author, and she was on a podcast we did called Living the Next Chapter, and we had a great conversation. We thought, hey, let's jump over to Dad Space. Let's continue the conversation and talk about Dad. And we had a great interview, great chance to chat together. Happy to share this with you. So this is Kristin here on Dad Space. Enjoy. And go check out her book, check out all of her stuff, and let her know that you heard her episode here on Dad Space. If you're a dad and you're wondering what that daughter thinks of you, here's an episode for you, just for you to ponder and hear from Kristin on Dad Space. Here we go. We figured out the buttons. Welcome to Dad Space, everybody. Kristin Birdwell is here. Kristin was just on a podcast recording with me over on Living the Next Chapter. And you know what? We had such a great conversation. We had to do this again. But now on Dad Space, Kristin, welcome to Dad Space. Glad to have you here. How are you?
I'm stoked. I'm happy to be here. Yeah,
so
I'm stoked.
two podcast recordings back to back in the same day. Are you like a podcast fan? Like, tell me about this.
I love podcasts. I think it's like one of my favorite ways to consume information and also share. So I am a huge fan of podcasts.
Okay, so I love asking, do you have any like fun podcasts that you listen to that make you smile? Anything that you're like, this is a great one?
I have one that I listen to. I mean, it makes me smile, but it also, I feel like I'm nourishing my soul when I listen to it and learning about all the spiritual things that I want to dive into. And it's called The Soul Collective. It's so good.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. So when I have to laugh, I listen to Smartless. It is Sean Hayes. It is Jason Bateman and Will Arnett.
Ooh,
three of
okay.
them. And what they do is they have like a celebrity guest comes on, Mike Myers, like something like that, right? But only the person who got the guest knows who the guest is. The other two don't know.
Oh, cool.
And then they have their camera covered, and then they take the camera cover off, and it's Kamala Harris or it's whoever, right? It's this amazing guest. And then they get to ask them questions. It's like an hour interview. So much fun. And the three of them are hilarious together. So Smartless.
That's awesome.
Smartless is my big one.
I have a question. Do you watch the video or do you mainly just listen to them, or like, what do you prefer?
I like the video version because it gives you another element. You get to see the cool microphone that your guest has, things like that. That's always awesome. I love the connection of seeing the visual side of it, but for most times I'm listening to the audible version. I'm doing something else at the time.
Yeah.
But I love the option of having the video too. It's always good. What about you?
I tend to, I listen to Call Her Daddy, and sometimes I'll watch the video on that. Daddy. And then, but usually it's same as you. I just like have it on while I'm driving or listening to something, cleaning, it's like a twofer. I feel like I'm doing two things at once.
Well, see, there you go. So you're going to have to listen to this episode of Dad Space because our guest today is amazing. I'm going to talk about our guest. Kristin is on Dad Space today. Kristin is an author. I don't know if you met her. She's an author. She's just an amazing person all around. She loves lighthouses, which I found out in another episode. Kristin is, she wrote a book. And again, I'm introducing her to you like you've never met her, but Kristin wrote a book, Sex, Drugs, and Soul. And yeah, glad to have you here. That was really
Yeah.
weird, right? It felt like I was talking about you, but it is you. That's kind of odd. Okay. Anyways,
It is me.
um,
I am totally still getting used to being called and calling myself an author too. It's only been like 3 weeks, coming up on a month ish. So I,
that's cool. So, okay. So this is Dad Space. This is a podcast that we created to support dads, to give voices to dads, but also to
Mm,
encourage dads
mm,
and share our dad's story. Now, having you on today is so unique because you have a perspective on dads from your life growing up, and I'd love to share that a little bit. You mentioned before we hit record that there's kind of like three dads that you kind of have in the back of
mm-hmm,
your mind when you wrote your book and as you do all this stuff.
mm-hmm.
Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my book is a really big examination into my daddy issues. No,
Yeah.
I'm kidding. In some ways, but no, it explores like the wounding, the abuse, and loss of my three dads: my biological dad, my stepfather, and then this sugar daddy guy that I was romantically involved with for, on and off for 7, 8 years. And but also it involves so much of the gifts and it's definitely a relationship that I value and has been very formative. So that's it piqued my interest in coming in here to spread any insights, advice, to help people strengthen their relationship with themselves and then with their kiddos. So
Yeah.
anything, yeah.
So for me, like I'm a dad, my kids are all in their early 20s. So
Mm-hmm.
they're pursuing life right now where you were when you're talking about in your book. So the interesting part I see as a dad is that I grow up in one generation, one
Mm-hmm.
time and one time frame. And I learned from my family, and my dad grew up in a totally different generation. And my kids now are in another totally different generation. So what worked for me growing up, learning as a kid, with my dad, I take elements of that as a dad and I try to, raise my
Mm,
family that way. But life is so different now that some of the things that I learned or that I know are not as effective or relevant today, in dealing with my kids. So from your
mm-hmm.
perspective, what are some of the things that you learned from your dad and your stepdad that helped you? And maybe what are some of the things that maybe weren't quite as helpful as
Mm.
you look back?
Yeah, well, I would say that the first thing that comes to mind with my biological dad, helping me wise, he was always like reserved emotionally. And I'll circle back to that. But the main thing that he helped me with, I was wanting to move to California and he had cancer at the time. And so I felt in some ways I didn't want him to feel that I was abandoning him.
Mhm.
If I chose to move to California. And because I had moved back initially to spend extra quality time with him, it freaked me out when my dad had cancer. And I was like, oh, I got to soak up this time. Um, that being said, he was like, Kristin, sometimes you got to quit worrying about making everyone else happy and do what makes you happy. And so that was a big lesson and turning point in my life. Awareness of my people pleasing at the time. And then also, how can I align with what will make me happy in life and act accordingly to that. And then on the emotionally reserved side, like I know that he had like some wounds. He had lost his dad at a young age, very protective, vulnerably, even though I believe that vulnerability is so
Yeah.
beautiful, that I would have loved to have those feelings expressed more often.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
For sure, for sure. Um, and if it's hard to do verbally, like I would suggest maybe written, because one of the best gifts he ever gave me is this beautiful book that I have, called like My Dad, His Story, His Words. And I gave it to him because I wanted to know certain things or get to know him on a deeper level, strengthen the connection. And it was easier for him to write than probably speak it. And it's definitely like one of my most prized possessions now. I'm looking at it and scanning through it.
So Kristin, what I like just as you do that, I
Mhm,
love that it's within arm's reach of our
mhm,
conversation. That tells me something. It's not like, oh, it's in some box in the storage place.
mm,
It's like right
mm,
here. I can put my hand on it. So
Mm-hmm.
I celebrate that. That's amazing. First of all, very subtle that you just happen to have it right there. Like we weren't planning this at all. But um, is there anything in there that I don't want to give away the contents of your dad's book, but is there anything
Mm-hmm.
in there that was a huge surprise to you that made you just kind of like go, really? Like that's how you felt, or that's what you were
Mm.
thinking, or
There's one description that it says something about like being born. I don't know on which page it is,
yeah,
but he describes like wearing the gown and hair thingy, I think he calls it,
yeah,
and peeking and peering through the glass and like trying to find his daughter. And I was like, oh.
oh gosh,
Yeah, I mean, it really tugged on my heartstrings because like I imagine myself like peeking back through the other side of the glass, like
yeah.
searching
Which
for my
one's my
dad to
dad?
find.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And then I there's just another question that's like, how do you wish, what is your perfect day? And it's just like beautiful weather, no work, friends and family and around. And I'm with that that's aligns with me too.
yeah.
And then it just asked like, how do you want future generations of your family to remember you? And they all he put was like, I hope they think I was a good man. And I'm like,
See, right?
some zingers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very simple, but also very impactful.
So the one thing I know talking to other dads and other families here on Dad Space is there's just this overwhelming sense that even though you get the new title of being a dad, you really have no training. You have really no resources. Like I remember taking my daughter, who's my middle child, and we're walking to the car from the hospital to leave to go home. And I'm like, nobody's coming with me. Like, you guys just trust me to take care of this girl? Like, really? Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And
Mm,
you guys are all okay with this. Like, the nurses
mm,
aren't coming, the doctors aren't coming, nobody's coming. They all wave
yeah.
at you, like, bye. You're like,
Yeah.
and the reality of, oh my gosh, I'm responsible for another life.
Mm,
And I'm not even a complete person myself. And now I
mm,
have to help this person build a future and build a life when I'm not even together. Right.
mm,
And
mm-hmm.
even though we might have that air of, I got this together, I know what I'm doing, deeply inside, speaking as a dad, there's a lot of times when we don't have a sweet
Yeah.
clue what we're doing. Right. And we just kind of
Yeah.
fake our way through life and hope we don't make any bad mistakes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the struggle that I see from my side of the camera, my side of the mic.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there's just a lack of resources, a lack of community for dads.
Yeah. And oh, well, that's good though. Then you're being proactive and helping create more resources and all
Yeah,
that. Because yeah, I imagine like you back in the day, generation, now it's you can log online and like find blogs or different communities or something like that. But I mean, whenever you were leaving the
yeah,
hospital, whenever my
no,
dad was leaving the hospital, not as much was available unless you like cracked open some book. But even those I think are even more geared towards like the feminine,
yeah.
the female, or the motherly role.
Why do you
Yeah.
think that is?
Mm, I'm not sure. The readiness and availability to I feel like, well, the masculine for so long has had to have been projected this standard of, oh, I've got to stay strong, I've got to hold it together, for people that maybe the readiness or availability of information is not as much or as quick.
Okay, so I have a question for you from a daughter's perspective. What do you need, or what did you need growing up
Mm-hmm.
from your dad that A, you got, or you needed more of?
I would have loved just like more connection. I mean, more so either physical touch, like love and affection, or the expressing of it. It's like
Mhm.
sometimes I feel like I could have looked at my dad and I got that he loved me through the eye contact, but I so longed for it to be expressed, and then would later on sought that in my romantic relationships. So
Right? Yeah.
yeah, it's very formative. But I also know that now I have an awareness that, he was doing the best he could at the time. and it's okay that I needed more, and it's okay if I need, if what he offered wasn't enough then. Yeah.
I think the big thing too, looking at it from a dad's perspective, is we're supposed to design life in a way that you, our kids, graduate and leave and go on and do your
Mm-hmm.
thing, right?
Mm,
So we're actually working ourselves out of a job in a sense,
mm,
which is an
mm,
odd thing to do because my kids are all moving on, they're doing their thing, and
mm.
I'd rather just keep them. I like that feeling of everybody under one roof. We're all in,
Oh.
going to bed. It's nighttime, and I know where all my kids are, right? That kind of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And as an
Mm.
empty nester now, I don't have that same sense. I don't know. I have no idea what they're doing right now. Where are they working or today? Or are they off today? I don't know. They give the occasional
Yeah.
text and stuff, right? But it's a different experience as your kids grow up and pursue
Mm-hmm.
life, right?
Yeah. It's like a letting go in some ways. And then it's like, how do we strengthen the relationship in other ways?
Yeah.
It's like if they're not physically in your house, it's like, do we start like a text stream or like a, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly
Yeah, something,
Zoom
right?
chat or something. Yeah.
So when you're 21, as you were talking about in the book and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
you're creating your independence, you're chasing your dreams, and you're going after what you want in life. Tell me about your connection back home. Did you
Mm.
did you kind of take a break from regular connection with your family by being somewhere else in the world, or just being busy and doing life? But how did you maintain or stay in touch and keep that feeling of family, even as
Mm.
you moved out and on your own?
Yeah. Um, well, then I probably got wrapped up and lived my life and did that sort of thing. But I always would come home every now and then and like get that in-person visit, or like with text and communicate.
Yeah.
Even if I wasn't communicating about all the things that were going on in my life, I would always at least like touch base every now and then. And it was important to me.
So, how important was the independent side at 21 of finding your path? Was that really important to you?
Oh, I totally wanted to like blaze my own trail and
Yeah.
do things my way. They could have offered probably potentially some advice, but I probably would not have listened to it.
Yeah.
Um, I was very stubborn and was like, no, you don't know about my life.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we
Now
talked.
I'd be a little bit more receptive to other viewpoints, like
Yeah.
at 34. But then very stubborn.
Yeah. So, like when we talked on Living the Next Chapter, you were just sharing a little bit about, you know, pursuing the dreams and doing your thing and living your life. And, you know, I'm really interested in that part of people's journey. And you mentioned that you didn't have any really regrets about how you've lived your life and where it's brought you to, and you're happy where you are right now. And
Hmm.
maybe some of the things that you're experiencing today you wouldn't have had you not gone down the path you've gone down. Um so you're not living like a life of regret, you're living a life that you've created for yourself, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah, I
that's a
stepped
part of
into
the
the
book as
role.
well,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think you can co-create the life that you want to live, like with intention and choices. And yeah, I I mean, it was, yeah, I think I just mentioned there that I was a little naive
Hmm.
and, and just kind of had this underlying sense that things will work out. And I mean, now they have, right? Because even though there were some dark nights of the soul and there was like grief when I lost my dad and a lot of pain and chaos and stuff. But now where I'm at, I'm like, I feel grounded in my being. I feel grounded in my essence. I love who I am.
Yeah.
And so if that all of that had to lead to where I am today, to have found like love and acceptance for myself, I'm cool with that.
So is there anything that you see when you look in the mirror, or you see yourself on video or talking or something, and you're like, wait a minute, that's so my dad. What I just did there, I
Mm,
just did something my dad would do. Is there anything that happens?
if I make any like corny jokes, or anything like that,
Yeah.
like or kind of like have like a little goofy laugh or grin, I feel like that is totally him. Um, or like that's what I notice sometimes. Or like if outside of being interviewed, like if I go and scratch my back against a wall or the corner of a wall, like that's totally
Yeah.
like coming
Yeah.
from him too. Yeah. My love of older music totally comes, and then
Mm.
that's one of those things that I used to be like, oh dad, why do we listen to the oldies like again, like, but now like the Credence and the Eagle, those are my faves.
See,
So
right?
it's evolved. Yeah.
And it takes you back, right? As soon as
Yeah.
that song starts, you like can visualize it. It
Mm-hmm.
takes you somewhere. And I love that about
Mm-hmm.
music. Anything creative that brings you back to that moment where you can reshare that with your
Mm-hmm.
dad.
Mm.
That's amazing, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I love it.
So
Okay.
beautiful.
So advice for young 21-year-olds, Kristen, that are wanting to break out of the house and do life. Any words of caution at all for somebody who just wants to get
Mm.
out of here? I want to move to California
Maybe,
and live my life.
yeah, maybe just connect with yourself and are you like ask yourself questions and strengthen the relationship to yourself. Approach like it with a curiosity. So it's like, are you wanting to do this for yourself or are you wanting to do this for other people? And in what capacity is it in? There's a point where it's like, okay, yes, I'm doing this for others in an act of service, or I'm doing this for others as an act of an abandonment towards myself. So there's like a very clear distinction there that you can make, right?
Mhm.
And like getting clear on what you do desire in life and how you want to feel, how you want to live, how do you want to express. Yeah, just getting real curious and specific with the questions that you ask yourself, and I maybe journal it out. That would be some good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the one thing people anticipate is that if I move to a new location, another part of the country,
Yeah.
I can start a new life. But the one thing
Mhm.
that you bring with you to that new location is you.
Yeah,
And you are the
absolutely.
same you that you were when you left. And when you arrived at the new location,
Hmm.
you are still Kristen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's
Kristen,
just geography.
new location, same you, right? So
Yeah.
moving to a new location doesn't change you, but
Hmm.
how you live your life and what you experience, what you open yourself up to, what you close yourself
Hmm.
off to, everything, right? That's
Hmm.
that's how you change you, right?
Hmm.
So don't think that a location is going to make things better
Yeah.
or worse. You're bringing you to the location. So that'd be
Hmm.
the one thing that I would probably
Yeah.
suggest, right? Like
Yeah.
if your parents are over demanding and you don't have freedom, so I'm going to leave. Well, you're going to have some of that freedom that you wanted, but you're still going to be you,
Hmm.
right? And you still need family, you need connection, you need community.
Hmm.
It's a need that we all have, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah. And I have definitely acted from the hyper like I think that hyper independence is a trauma response. And
mhm.
whenever my dad died, I definitely like tried to isolate and become an island. And yeah, like you said, like we definitely need that community. And though for a while I'd stepped into the role and shoes of like, I'm strong enough to handle this on my own. I don't want
Yeah.
anyone to know or see me in my low points. Um, but now I know that I can, like, to ask for what I need and to seek out the community and whatever it is that will help support that.
So if we kind of did this a little bit on living the next chapter, we kind of took you back
Hmm.
to 21-year-old Kristen. Let's do that
Hmm.
again here on Dad Space, but this time as 21-year-old Kristen, what would you like to say to dads that would help dads with 21-year-olds who are on this
Mm,
porch, on the step, ready to go? What did you need? And what could dads do for their kids right now, today, listening?
yeah, I would have loved to just, even if it doesn't feel like it's always being received, I would have loved even more communication. Um, and maybe that's just a conversation to be had between both parties about talking about boundaries and fears and desires when in the realms of that relationship container. Um, I would have, looking back, it's a lot easier to say that, to have a conscious perspective. But had we both communicated those things, it would have, I felt like, led to a more harmonious relationship.
Mm-hmm. And so,
Yeah.
I think the other thing too is looking back at my youth as well. You're young, you think your parents are out of touch, dumb, whatever. They don't know what they're so
Mm-hmm.
behind. But then as you get older, you realize, wait a minute, they're actually quite smarter than I gave them credit for, because
Mm-hmm.
now I'm understanding as an adult how tough life is. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not under that shelter of home anymore. I'm not under that roof of my parents, and I'm having to fight for my survival and figure stuff out. And then you realize, well, my mom, my dad, my stepdad, they're actually quite smart and they
Mm-hmm.
are a great resource. So I need
Yeah.
to keep that bridge open, that communication
Mm-hmm.
open, right?
For sure. And then also to recognize the intentionality behind it. Like, I sometimes today I'm in a different realm. Like my mom will text me because, and depending on where I'm at my day, sometimes I get annoyed.
Yeah.
But then I just remind myself, it's like, no, I value this relationship, this communication, and it's coming from the best place. It's coming from this place of love, even if it's not always like what I desire in that exact moment. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
So I
I
don't
think
know
the
if,
same applies to
yeah,
like
yeah.
father relationships.
So
Mhm.
I don't know if you're like, if you're a boxing fan by any means, but there's a thing that happens within a boxing match if you ever watch on TV or go to a live one. When the bell rings and the boxers go back to their corners, a stool comes out, somebody comes out to kind of clean you up, another person's there to get you back into your headspace correct. And
Mm,
those are your two or three people, and
mm,
they're in your corner and they're
mhm,
there to help you, refocus you, and get you back out to life,
mm.
right?
I love that.
So in our life as kids, as dads, we all need somebody in our corner that when life beats us up, that there's another round coming, Kristin. We have to get back out there again. We need somebody to kind of build us up. So it could be a text from a mom. It could be
Hmm.
something, right? Those are your people who know and love you more than anyone in the stands. And they know who you are and they know how to flick that switch that puts you back in the game because they know you so well,
Hmm.
right? So tell me about maybe some of your people in your family or your friends that know you and love you in that way, that
Mm,
when life beats you up, they know how to reset you and get you back out there. Who are they?
mm. Oh, definitely my mom. Like she always gives good advice, support, encouragement. Like whether that's an uplifting video from YouTube or the ability to listen and witness like whatever it is I'm going through. Because sometimes I think that sometimes we don't always necessarily need the like insight or guidance, but we just want to be seen and heard
Yeah. Yeah.
in whatever it is that we're going through. So it's like having the like, can you just off? She sometimes like she's great at just offering that space that I need.
Yeah.
And like, and then I can also ask for more support whenever I need it. And then I also have like some select friendships. So like they offer support, whether it's humor or, encouraging words, or how I've helped them on their journey. It's like reciprocal. So they're
Yeah.
they're helping me in that moment too. And it's also relying upon my sometimes ability to ask for help or ask for what I need, and not anticipate and not expect people to be a mind reader
Yeah.
to know like whenever I need some extra support. So that's
Great.
another little element. Yeah.
So if you had a chance to write in your book, Kristin, before we close off, the book that you reached out and grabbed from your dad, if you had a chance to write in
Mm,
your book, maybe what would be something you'd write in your book about your dad?
mm, mm, hmm.
Mhm.
I'm like,
I like when guests
where do
think.
I?
I love when guests think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because I'm like, there's so much that, um, yeah, his fortitude, I think, is one of the things that I admire to have been through so much in a short period of time. And I hope now that like through the legacy of like my book and my journey and just like that his lives on.
Yeah.
He didn't choose to put his down into like, a formal book for others, but I think that his essence and lives on through the telling of mine. And yeah, I think so much of it too is like having a longing or desire for wanting to be proud of me. And I think that he would be today.
It's amazing. So Kristin, after we're done here, you have a little bit of homework. Okay. I'm going to give you some homework. You all right with that?
Yes, for sure.
You've inspired me by your cool microphone, so I need to give you some homework. I would love for you to take that book out again and flip through a few more pages and just put a smile on your face and think about the guy that knew nothing and took you home and saw you through that window, like you talked about. That same nervous guy, afraid that he's going to mess up or do not his best in life. He did really, really well. And he left you some words for you to remember. And that's your homework. Just go through the pages and look them again. And again, like, I love it. I love that you could just reach up and grab that in a moment's notice. That tells me a lot about your relationship with your dad. That means something to you, right?
I have all the things here.
See? It's beautiful.
Yeah, right? I definitely value that relationship. Yeah, my favorite picture of us is on our desk. I got one of my most prized possessions, the words. Yeah.
So there you got you a little bit of homework today.
I'll totally take you up on that.
Okay, and I hope it puts a smile on your face, some happiness in your heart. Everybody, Kristin Birdwell has a book, Sex, Drugs, and Soul. If you need some more Kristin Birdwell in your life, go over to Living the Next Chapter, hear more about the book, hear more about the upcoming podcast. All of the connections and all the information will be in the show notes to connect with Kristin. Kristin, thank you for being on Dad Space. You've brought joy to this old dad's heart over here.
Oh, good.
Awesome.
Yay.
You're a great guest. So happy to have you on. Any parting words for dads? What can we tell them?
Any parting words for dads? Let's see here. Be you, express you. And express, like, I don't think that there will be any regret in you communicating how much you loved your children to them on either side.
Sweet. Kristin Birdwell here on Dad Space. Thank you, Kristin, so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for listening to Dad Space today. Go check us out on all of our social media, YouTube, all that great stuff. You can find us as Dad Space Podcast. Real simple. Dad Space Podcast, whether on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, even YouTube. Email us, dadspacepodcast@gmail.com. We're always looking for great guests to come on the podcast. If you have any feedback for us, let us know here at Dad Space. Looking forward to connecting with you on the next episode, right here of Dad Space. Follow us on your podcast app for more. Cheers. To you, Dad. Thank you.